and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please help us get the word out about this podcast to other enthusiasts. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Lei. I'm the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. Lei, as I said before we started the show, happy Mid-Autumn Festival to you and your family. And can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. Likewise, good morning. This is your co-host Lei Xing speaking, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 135. Yes, happy Mid-Autumn Festival. And also the China National Day coming up in just 2 days.
Yes, that's like our 4th of July.
Yes. So in China, everybody's saying 双节快乐, which means happy double holiday. Transliterally.
Yeah. And mooncakes are all over the place.
Yeah, I've been eating mooncakes ever since I came back from Detroit. So,
man, when we were there, remember when you would just get just bombed with mooncakes?
Yeah. So China is kind of on break. The U.S. government is about to shut down or in danger of shutting down. The UAW strike now into its third week, nowhere near ending. And we have some EV news. I just rattled off some headlines. So Neo Merck, BYD number 4, Li Auto 500,000, Hui Ka-en in custody, EU Commission EVP on China EV anti-subsidy probe, 4 CATL plant pause, Mitsubishi done in China, Xpeng G9 deliveries in Sweden, and FF executive shuffle. Where should we begin?
Let me add one very important bullet point, other item. Tesla hit 5 million vehicles this week built, and it was a made in China refreshed Highland Model 3 that rolled off the line. That was the 5 millionth. So very appropriate. But we don't need to talk about Neo Mercedes again, do we? No. So let's start with the UAW, because what we're starting to see, Lei, is more and more articles that are peeling the layers of that onion back about how American and European automakers got to this point. And a big part of what's going on with the UAW is also the highlighting of the Ford CATL partnership, which is in real jeopardy. And there was a great article on the Wall Street Journal this week posted, and GM basically said, this is no bueno. And Farley must be completely upset, because the one thing that I will say, and I posted something on LinkedIn, which is probably not going to be a very popular post, that happened this week as well, is August sales made BYD brand the 4th largest automaker in the world, surpassing a Ford Motor Company. That should not be underestimated. So I'll let you chime in.
So BYD was number 5 in July.
Sorry. Yeah. So now they're 4.
Number
right?
5 in July, and they went up a spot to number 4 in August based on that TrendForce market share. And they're just 0.1 of a percentage point behind Honda, which means they probably will likely get to number 3 behind Toyota and Volkswagen. And at the same time, BYD market cap is also number 3 behind Toyota and Tesla and Toyota.
Let me be clear, so there's no confusion, Lei. This is the brand, not the company.
Yeah.
So Honda also has Acura. Toyota also has Lexus. So we're just talking about Ford branded and BYD brand, okay?
Yeah.
Significant nonetheless, all right?
Yeah, so I think it's just a matter of time before BYD climbs further, because as they are And they're getting it done in China and outside of China. Whereas the other brands, they're facing a bit of, domestically and in China, right? We don't even have to talk about China, the foreign legacy autos. Mitsubishi being one example. They're done. They're no longer producing, ending production.
Come on, Lei. They were done. They were cooked years ago. They just officially said it out loud this week.
Yeah. Well, that was a Nikkei report. So it's such a, contrast of what's happening.
And what's important to note, Lei, is that companies like BYD, and it's only BYD, the only company that's doing this. It's not only Ford losing 6% of sales month over month from the US and in Europe, but it's BYD growing its sales. So it's a squeeze on both sides of it, which indicates that distance is not likely going to get closed anytime soon between those two brands, okay? Meaning that over the next several months, BYD will likely distance itself further from Ford Motor Company, okay?
Yeah, so that's the kind of reality setting in. As I said, right, it's a reckoning moment, as I said in the video, right, that we posted. There's going to be a lot more reckoning moments coming.
And there's a post I'd on LinkedIn, and there's a gentleman that effectively said that. So I have a bone to pick, and I'm going to get on my soapbox, okay? Bear with me, Lei, because I'd love your thoughts on this as well. He posted a comment that said, effectively, China forced these OEMs when they entered China into a joint venture. And so that's the narrative that the Europeans want to make in their minds to rationalize the protectionism that they want for their market. Yeah. But let me be clear here. Volkswagen chose to enter the market. That was the requirement to enter the market. They could have not entered the market. Mercedes, BMW, they could have decided we don't want to enter this market. But the requirement, so no one was forced, okay? I can't be any clearer on that. They decided to enter the market knowing that that was a requirement. And fast forward 40 years, they wouldn't be the companies that they are without the China market. I don't think Volkswagen or Toyota gets to 10 million units per year 3 or 4 years ago without the China market. Okay? The second thing that people talk about is this forced tech transfer. If it wasn't for the swift shift in EVs and demand for EVs in China, I think Volkswagen and GM would still be doing okay. Okay? They would still be leaders in the China market. And so where did this ICE tech transfer happen? Because Volkswagen and GM, they don't have EV IP. It's not like these Chinese companies took IP from them, the legacy companies, to build EVs. So this tech transfer thing, this forced tech transfer thing, it never materialized. That was a ghost that people were pointing at. Okay, so two things that I don't believe happened. I was there, you were there for a very long time. And these are the things that people point to. But again, Volkswagen, most of their profits come out of China. Without China, they would not be who they are. Mercedes, Audi, Porsche, you can say all these companies, okay? So I'll let you comment, but I'm jumping off my soapbox now.
We already talked about this last episode, so I don't have anything more to say other than I agree with you. So the foreign automakers benefited from the market. However, with the rules in place, but they benefited, right? They participated. So whether it's forced or not, right? They've already reaped the profits or the benefits.
Right.
And now it's a completely new game, right? And so, which is a good segue into this EU commissioner, the executive VP, Dombrovskis. He was in China for that China-EU dialogue earlier this week. And I thought what was interesting was at the press conference at the very last day, I think it was on September 26th. So he basically mentioned 2 points on the anti-subsidy, EV subsidy probe. One is that it's on the presence of production side subsidies, not consumer side subsidies. And then the other point he mentioned was the risk of injury to the EU industry. And after that, he said EU does not pursue a protectionistic policy and also does not have any policy forcing local production. And I thought he kind of contradicted himself because he said there's a risk of injury. But if it was an open and fair market, right, what injury? That they're just competing. If you can't compete, you lose market share. So that's I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
Well, I don't understand half the things that politicians say anyways.
Yeah.
But you and I believe that there's probably a lot more bark than bite. So, but I do think that throwing that out into the open maybe forces some of these Chinese companies to think less aggressively about the European market, if only to not be able to get pointed at to say, look, see, this is what's happening. I don't think BYD cares. I think this is more of a concern for other automakers, Chinese EV automakers that are maybe struggling in China or not doing as well as they'd like and really do need Europe as a pressure release valve for their capacity or excess capacity. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure because all the politicians previously had been very, very vocal on this changeover to electric vehicles. Europe has done pretty well over the last few years from a growth standpoint. UK, not so much, but the UK, they're not incentivizing purchase of EVs either. The United States, I think the Inflation Reduction Act, unless it gets, unless the new president in 2024 or starting in 2025 decides that it's not good for the American people.
Yeah, Trump said EVs are too expensive. So
that's the entire point. This is what I'm talking about. That's the entire point for the Inflation Reduction Act, because yes, they acknowledge that they're too expensive.
Yeah, and without LFP, they're going to remain expensive. And you mentioned earlier the no bueno for GM, which is actually, I think their stance is, maybe all of the automakers' stance is that because there's still no clear explanation of this entity of concern, what is it called, the right, and these jargon, and what will constitute like these are not very clear in the current format. That's why I think GM is also kind of waiting, although they're no bueno, but who knows if the CATL goes through, then right.
And this is the important caveat or note between what's happening, because it's not the Ford CATL partnership and it's not CATL as an individual entity. It's the fact that it'll open the floodgates, and other automakers will do the same thing with a Chinese battery partner. And that's the risk.
We haven't heard any pushback, at least not yet, on the Goshen's Illinois plant, whereas the Ford CATL has been such a scrutiny, right?
Well, there is rumblings of the Goshen factory.
Yeah, sure.
Locally, it's not a national thing because the UAW strike shines a spotlight on that because they've not conceded that these employees should be UAW employees, right? So the Goshen factory there's a lot of local controversy. It's not national, but it's also very controversial. So.
Yeah, and going back to even though the Neo Merc is not really news, but one thing I want to stress is that the precarious thing is that Mercedes already, their biggest shareholder is who? Chinese owned.
Yes.
So I have no doubt that the Mercedeses are talking to the Neos.
Oh, I think Mercedes is probably talking to more than Neo. And I think Neo is talking more than Mercedes. So
that's the point. So at the end of the day is, what is it? I mean, Ola has been on the record saying that they will not consider putting a Mercedes badge on someone else's platform. He's been on the record saying that. So what could happen? Why would they want to invest in Neo based on this report, right? And right now Neo has denied it, right?
What's really rich though, Lei, is that some of the insiders and I think the board members are concerned that a Neo partnership might tarnish the Mercedes brand. So
Yeah, so lots of factors at play that.
this is ignorant pride from an 80-year-old, vice president who knows nothing about how technology works, because Mercedes is in real trouble. All of the legacies are in real trouble, because if they believe in the next 10 years they can get really good in software development, just this point alone.
Yeah.
And being good at software development is one thing, Lei, in the next 10 years. Being good enough to compete against an Apple or a Tesla, a whole different ballgame. Okay? So think about that. That's just like you and me saying, you know what, we're going to build this digital consumer products company, and we're going to compete against Apple in the next 10 or 12 years, because that's what they're pushing up against. Okay?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, at least Merck is relatively more nimble because they only are focused on that brand. And they've given away basically smart to Geely, right? So
Yep.
focusing on Mercedes, focusing on that new concept, the MBOS, and we'll see how that plays out, whether they'll have the same issue with CARIAD that's been delaying the Porsches and the Audis, right? So,
but to me, the complexity of Volkswagen, I said that it's less about a tech advantage and it's more about poor management, an ill-fitting culture, a risk averseness, the wrong skill sets. It's almost everything but not being able to code. To me, it's a willingness to put it out there and risk. And this is, to me, the attitude when I read that about the Mercedes insiders were pushing back about tarnishing a brand. They risk relevancy. That's what I'm talking about. It's the same. We can't risk this. We're going to be conservative with this. And that's what Volkswagen did. And they painted themselves into a corner, which forced them to acquire 5% of Xpeng, right? So, because at the end of the day, you do this partnership, and if nothing happens, then nothing happens, because nobody cares about Geely owning 9% of Mercedes except for the Germans, right? It's crazy to think that. I mean, NIO is a very well-established brand. It's a well-respected brand. Their perception needs to catch up. Their reality needs to catch up to some of that perception. And it's a startup, man. It's an automotive startup. So they're going to have lumps, hills, valleys. But to say that NIO is going to tarnish the Mercedes brand, in what market? Your most important market, NIO probably has a better brand perception than Mercedes. In China, right?
Seems that way.
So the irony is not lost on me that these people are still in complete denial that they will not be able to compete against Apple if they continue to think they can make things in-house. They can't compete against a Tesla. They will not. I'm sorry. So I don't know, man. I'm a little fired up this morning. I don't know why.
Maybe
I should be happy.
Mooncakes.
I should be happy. The Lions won. They crushed the Green Bay Packers last night. But man,
that's the reason. That's the reason they can beat anyone, right?
Oh man, yeah. So I'm fired up, man. I just it is exhausting. Oh no, I'll take that back. This week I met with some potential clients in Detroit, and my heart started racing a little bit because we're just talking in circles, because I'm asking questions, they're answering them with this attitude that, oh, we can eventually get that done in-house. We can eventually get that done. We will build that expertise. And I had to bite my tongue. I was like, because I didn't want to ask when. Because did you just see that Ford lost? I mean, Ford is on its way down from a brand standpoint globally. And it's getting beat by a company that builds its own batteries and fabs its own chips. So when are you going to get this done? So anyways, let's move on.
Yeah. So what else? So Li Auto, Li Auto Speed, right? The 500,000 comes just, so in March, they did their 300,000s. And in July, they did their 400,000s. So before the end of the year, they're going to do their 600,000s. And within a year, they're going to do another 500,000.
And their share price is kind of flattening out. So
yeah. So I mean, what gives?
Yeah. It,
But I
well,
mean,
it's a single market,
I think a
right?
lot of
It's a single market. It's an EREV, and the vehicles
yeah,
are
the
effectively the
ERAV,
same thing.
that's the
So
perplexing part that a lot of people still don't understand. Why can ERAVs be such a successful and Li Auto made a big bet, right? A pivot, and they won. They're
and the truly amazing thing is that these vehicles are starting at 50, 60,000 US dollars. So they're not cheap. Even the L7 is fairly expensive. So it is considered a premium automaker, premium new energy vehicle brand in China. And so it's competing indirectly with NIO. It's competing indirectly with a Porsche, with a Mercedes, with an Audi. And this should be very, very concerning for ABB for sure.
well, I'm seeing so Audi is probably already relevant. So I'm seeing some people posting it's the BBLs. So, I'm like, oh, Audi, man, that's a donking. That it's already becoming irrelevant. It's right. We're losing that letter to L from the A to the L, and next year basically is going to be L alone at the top. That's what they want to do.
Everyone, I'm going to tell you right now in 2024, keep an eye out for Porsche. Keep an eye out for their sales because they're going to deal with Li Auto, NIO, Yangwang, Lotus, Volvo, and Polestar. So,
Speaking of Yangwang, right? They opened a showroom on the Bund at the House of Roosevelt.
why
I
time?
mean, that's
Why
like
time?
that's the most expensive property you can find on the Bund. I think. I mean, they're man.
When I pretended to be, this big time dude, I would go to House of Roosevelt on the deck and drink some nice whiskey, eat some steaks. What a beautiful, beautiful view of Pudong, right?
And the Yangwang is perfectly because you Yangwang, right? You Yangwang the stars, right?
Yeah, so they plan on doing the only equivalent that I can think of is like Nike stores. So they have the flagship stores. So this Waitan is like a flagship experience
Yep,
center.
yep.
And then they're going to pepper China 90 by the end of this year with retail locations where I think it's more about selling the vehicle than trying to create a brand experience. But for those that have never been to Shanghai, the House of Roosevelt is basically in the middle of the Bund, and
Yeah.
there's a deck
Golden
that
spot.
yeah, there's several really great restaurants and bars on the Bund that give you a tremendous view of Pudong, but House of Roosevelt is one of the most famous for the expats anyways. And it's a steak place, so lots of wine, lots of whiskey, and it's one of these mahogany wood old school restaurants. And man, so that gives you an idea of so they're trying to also make it a tourist attraction, so there's this twofold, because anytime you're on the Bund, you play a role in the trying to attach your brand to premium, but then also creating a tourist attraction.
So I mean, Neo House basically started this thing, right? Neo House took over Audi, the first ever Neo House in Oriental Plaza, right? Took over Audi
Oh yeah.
showroom.
And so for our listeners, now we're talking about Beijing.
Yeah, Beijing, yeah. And now you're seeing this right type of retail format popping
So
up in these places.
let me try to give the history lesson, Lei. This time, for the first time ever, I lived in CBD, which was a few blocks from Chang'anjie, which is the same road that Tiananmen Square and the Forbidden City is on. CBD is probably a mile or a mile and a half, a couple kilometers away from the Forbidden City. So basically, you could ride your bike from East Third Ring Road to Forbidden City in no time. A lot of people wake up really early and watch the flag raised in Tiananmen Square. And so along the way, to Forbidden City, there's this Oriental Plaza that's attached to this huge mall. And Oriental Plaza is a mixed use, so it also has office buildings. And in the front, on the corner, it used to be an Audi of this mall, used to be an Audi brand store, and NIO took over for it. And so you couldn't get any closer to the Forbidden City, like the center of China, effectively, right? Because Forbidden City is there, and just down the road was Zhongnanhai, right? And so yeah, just to give you a picture of how ambitious these companies are, the two most iconic areas the most iconic areas of Beijing and Shanghai is where a NIO brand store is, and now in Shanghai, at least, a Yangwang store. So
Yeah.
So they don't lack in ambition for sure, right? This would be like retail store right in Times Square in Beverly Hills or downtown Manhattan on Park Avenue, okay? Right next to the Ferrari dealership, basically. So
yeah. So Huikayan, Evergrande, Evergone. What do you think?
So
I think they put him in custody so that to keep him safe. That's all I think it is.
This is a real. So real estate is 25% of the Chinese economy, and Evergrande in 2016 or 2017, the founder CEO, who's now in custody, like you had said, he was the richest person in China, and Evergrande has over $300 billion of debt. And so the Chinese government the Chinese government allowed for this debt to accumulate. And with the economy in a downturn, puts downward pressure on real estate. And so Evergrande has not been able to service its interest payments on that debt. And how we relate it back to the EV sector, Evergrande is the company that launched Hengshi.
Hengshi, yeah.
So, which I thought was a land play, because 5-6 years ago, if you start an EV company, provinces would welcome you because they wanted you to open a manufacturing facility in their location, which Evergrande would have used to build mixed-use buildings, would have built more retail locations, more properties for individuals. So there is a real danger in certain cities where there's a lot of oversupply. So it's a real risk to the economy, for sure.
Yeah, for this to come out right before the holiday break, I mean, I think Bloomberg reported it first, like a few days ago, and it was, right, confirmed all the China media. Not surprising, I think, for there's so much ambitions when they announced all that deals back in 2019 and how much money they spent, and it just sounded like too good to be true,
If you think about it, all the major, I won't say all. Oh, that's a terrible. Some of the major CEOs, richest people in China, the Wanda guy, right? Remember? He built this
he has a son, studio. Famous son, right?
Yeah, the son drives like Ferraris and goes to clubs and does stupid stuff on social media. And the Wanda guy, obviously Jack Ma, and now the Evergrande guy. It is, anyways. But one thing I do want to mention is that it sounds like some of the relationship between the U.S. and China is trying to thaw a little bit.
Seems that way from the Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah, so I think it's the leading up to the November meeting in San Francisco.
Right, APEX is in the U.S. this year, right?
Yes, I think both countries and leadership of the countries know that where we can agree on things, we should try to hammer those details out.
So remember a few weeks ago about the Apple being restricted use of Apple, and that was nothing, right? Never. And now the latest is that they're trying to get rid of these apps so-called foreign apps
Yep.
for the App Store in China, right? That's being discussed. So, for example, X or Twitter, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
so Apple did meet with the ministry, I want to say, that's in charge of all that stuff, I think, to kind of figure all that stuff out. But oh man. So what else? What are we talking about next?
and then Hui Kai-yan, right? He once tried to invest into Faraday Future, and that kind of bombed out. And now Faraday Future has had recently a few executive shuffles, right? They switched the global CEO, which went on like a year ago, and they delivered 3 FF91s in Q3.
Lei,
I believe.
I'm gonna ask a favor of you, because my contacts at FF have left.
I still have some, so
maybe I would love to drive an FF91 if you can arrange that in LA, maybe.
in November. Yeah.
可以吗?
Definitely.
Even if we can't take pictures, I'd love to just check it out. So
Yeah, I'll put that on the things to do list.
actually, I lied. I do have one contact still. So if you're listening to the podcast, you know who you are. Hook a brother up.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to recruit a few people that you know of as well that we've spoken with, but a couple of them I've never met. So it could be a little bit of a party in LA, man. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I am not going to Tokyo. It's just too rushed. Too many things going on here. So
too far away.
Yeah. Anything else? What did I write in my newsletter? Let me check. Let me take a look at that real quick, Lei.
Mostly on the US UAW Ford stuff, which we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. And, well, I think it's important Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill that would have banned commercial trucking autonomous pilots on the roads. California used to be a leader in all that stuff, but now it's clearly China that's really trying to push that forward. So,
yeah, speaking of, so WeRide became, I think, the third after Baidu and Pony to get the permit to test their fully driverless robotaxis on highways on a Beijing expressway leading to the Daxing airport. So
the other thing that I wanted to point to, Lei, is what did you think of the Selena Chung story, Wall Street Journal, about the Mach-E launch in China?
Yeah, I mean, that's spelled out. I mean, the Ford, right? Besides Mach-E, you said it best. There's no strategy. There haven't been a clear strategy ever. So if that one product fails, it fails. Then there's nothing. And then also the part about really the retail strategy, right? They just formed a new company, I think, joint venture for selling. I think going back to the dealer model, which Xpeng is also doing, sort of.
It's just really half-baked, right? Oh, we're going to do direct-to-consumer, but none of our staff have this experience. And so, but, if Neo can do it and Tesla can do it, then we can do it. It's like, what? In the most difficult market, one of the most difficult automotive markets in the world, you're just like willy-nilly, oh, let's try this.
It simply comes down to the product availability. When you have the models, when it's a really competitive product when it was launched, but there's this tsunami of all different kind of models coming from these China EV brands every single day. Then from a consumer perspective,
that's not an exaggeration. Every day.
So from consumer perspective, like, I have so much to choose on. Why would I wait? Right? You're in the sea of competing models, and
there has been no real updates to the Mach-E since 2021 in China. So not only do you get behind, but then you just get forgotten because your refresh timeline is so slow. Because I believe if Ford could refresh the Mach-E, I think it would have a chance. But, it's got to, number one, it probably needs an LFP battery in China. And then number two, the connected features need to be dialed up to 50 relative to what it's capable of now. And those are just qualifiers, right, Lei? Because I don't think Chinese consumers see the Mach-E as this premium thing, which so that's why they need to reduce the price by swapping out the NCM battery. So
Yeah. The only thing it had was the Mustang brand, I guess, which does have a good following in China.
and had that controversy with the naming rights. But
Yeah.
the last thing I want to ask you about, Lei, is can you tell us a little bit? I can do it too, but I want to put you on the spot. Tell everybody what JD.com is.
I mean, that's where I get all my stuff, right?
So there's
So when I was, I'll tell you this, when I was in China in the summer, so basically Taobao, Tianmao, Tmall, and JD.com were probably the three most online platforms. So basically the China Amazon.com, where you get all kinds of things delivered to you.
so JD stands for Jingdong.
Jingdong, yeah, which is Beijing East
Yeah.
or something.
And it used to be, when it launched, right around the time Alibaba launched Tmall.
I think it launched 20 years ago during the SARS. Yeah.
And it used to focus on technology products, sales, e-commerce website for technology product sales.
Electronics. Yep.
So Alibaba and Tmall or Alibaba, Tmall, JD are the OGs for e-commerce in China. There's now
Pinduoduo.
the social, Pinduoduo. There are now the
Meituan.
Meituan, so there are now more social media or social commerce apps that kind of ape it in certain specialties.
Yep.
But Alibaba and JD are the OGs. And Mercedes, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Mercedes, Audi, they have brand websites on Alibaba, on Tmall.
Yeah.
And they have brand websites.
Almost every brand has
yes.
Their,
And now Tesla joins. So the retail store strategy is not working out as they'd like. They need to expand their footprint in a very simple, easy way. And so this will push them into the lower tier cities a little bit easier, at least from an outreach and engagement standpoint. They'll still need to build service centers and supercharging stations in those lower tier cities to really address any spikes in demand. But even Tesla is playing the game in China now, right?
Oh, yeah, it has to, play any game that's a localization.
Yeah. So, and we'll wait the outcome of the next several months to see.
Also on the Model Y versus the new, what is it called, Model 3 Plus?
Yeah.
How that kind of changes the dynamic between the two models in terms of share of sales, right? Because Model Y is getting steep competition, right? We have the GL1 and some others that are coming to play in that market, right?
EC6, ES6, L7.
L6 and 5 coming.
So I think our audience listens to us because we have this deeper knowledge of like a lot of different products that we know about, and at least half of them we've actually driven, right? So I think let me assure you all that the competition in China when it comes to mid-size crossovers and SUVs is, you have any choice you want. The SOEs,
and then I think,
have their own brands and products. The Chinese EV startups, you name it, there's an SUV out there that will fit what exactly you need.
And then one of the latest products launched was that Baojing window using the DJI kind of assisted driving stack,
ADAS system.
Which, so it sells for 120,000 RMB, which is less than $20,000, which gives you pretty sophisticated NOA capabilities, vision-based, for that price range, right? And then we kind of tweeted about the Xpeng P5 now without LiDAR. This refreshed 2024 version decided to get rid of the LiDAR. And that was such a, departure
It's
from
it's
when
the
it was
pendulum
launched.
swinging, right? It's the pendulum
Yeah,
swinging. So,
yeah.
hey, we are at 9:50, Lei. So,
I'm good, man.
yeah, let's open the room up and see if anyone has any questions. And Will's back on. Will, if you're listening and you have a few minutes, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Cyberster, the MG. I think your video popped up, or at least a teaser video. So if you want to tell us about that experience, and then if anyone has any other questions, please raise your hand. My prediction, Lei, is that Ford is going to probably be the first company to sign a contract with the UAW. Now, for those non-Americans, Ford has the largest UAW number of employees with the UAW. Stellantis is much more international, and GM is more international as well. They actually build quite a few vehicles in China. GM does. So this is the stuff, man. It's a shutdown and then this strike, and it's like just head scratching. We just shoot ourselves in the foot, and I don't know. I was pinging a few people, a few of our friends, trying to, because if you read that Wall Street Journal article, GM doesn't want the U.S. government to recognize that partnership between Ford and CATL to take any of the subsidies, right?
It sounded that way, right? It sounded there's a kind of a
So, which makes me wonder, and I'm going to try to figure this out talking to a few people next week. GM must believe they have a path to profitability without Chinese batteries, right?
must be.
I've talked to a lot of people we respect. I don't know what that path is, and I'd love to learn more about that. So I'm going to dig. And, just because I'm curious, just because I need to know.
Yeah.
Because it is going to be really tough. I think that GM is better positioned than Ford because Ford, again, and this is their China strategy for the US, we're going to have two vehicles. Now in 2025, they're supposed to launch a few more EVs, obviously, but they really need some home runs, some triples with these EVs because the Mach-E's a little bit older now. And honestly, Lei, if you're looking at a new EV in the United States, I'm thinking I'm getting a Kia. I'm not getting that Mach-E. But the Mach-E does get the discount, and the Kia EV6 does not. So, or EV7.
So the EV9 is coming out, and they're racing to produce, I think, that vehicle in Georgia, right, next year. And then this Honda Prologue, which is, I think, based on the Altium, or they work with GM on this vehicle, is coming out.
Yep.
So there's more, but it just pales in comparison, right, in terms of the offerings that are in China.
Well, and this is us being spoiled, right? Because we pay special attention to what's being launched in China. I don't think, and I don't think you believe this either, that the number of products will ever match what's happening in China. But there needs to be a critical mass in order to get more attention. And that critical mass needs to be across many price points. I think GM with the Equinox that's going to launch later this year, starting at 30,000. They announced that it's starting at 30,000. Whether it actually starts at 30,000 at launch is another thing. And guess what, Lei? If it does launch around 30, who's going to be looking at it? I'm going to be looking at it because
you're a hometown boy. You have to be.
And I'm lucky enough to have family members that have retired from GM. So hopefully that gives me a little bit of a price advantage as well. And so, I mean, because they saw the demand for the Bolt was consistent or continued at least at 27,000. And it's not 20, 30, 50, 60,000 units a month. But guess what, guys? If you learn to make it and stop building these cells by hand, and you can make more than a few thousand a month, I think you'd sell them easily. But so no questions. Let's just end it, brother. Please tell everyone about that 2-minute teaser video, those that have not seen it. I think it's pretty funny. And I know a way to improve the video now next time we do it. So maybe
Oh, that's good.
in November, Lei, we can do it in the FF91.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Let's put that on the
Wish list, on the wish list.
wish list. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining. We've caught up now with all of our back episodes for those that have missed and weren't able to join any of our live spaces. So please check out our website for all those back episodes and have a good Mid-Autumn Festival. We will talk with you all next week. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Yeah, we'll talk about September sales next week. And have a good holiday break for those that listen from China. And we'll talk to you next week.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu and Lei, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.